Hey everyone, this is No Meta here, and today we're going to be showing the deck profile of a Predaplant deck. And go.
So, it's a pretty standard Predaplant deck for the time. It's actually missing quite a few cards, but it works pretty well right now until Link format comes up, and then after that, just have to work around it. But alright, let's get started.
It's to your liking, though.
Yep. So 3 Orphan Scorpio. This is pivotal to the deck. You always either want to see this in your opening hand or another monster that could summon it. Its effect is once per turn, if this card is normal or special summoned, you could pitch a monster and special summon a Predaplant monster. The usual play with this would be to special summon Darling Tony and Cobra, but there are also a lot of monsters in here that you could special summon with it, and it's really not dead even after you do that Cobra play. But you always want to see this or Lonefire Blossom in your starting hand.
Really good card.
Triple Spinal Dyna. It works at 3 right now with the build that I have. Its effect is if it's normal or special summoned, you place a predator counter on an opponent's monster, and if they have a level of 2 or higher, they become a level 1. This works with the effect of you can tribute monsters with it, or the predator counters, that's how they work. That's why there's 2 other cards that are needed. I'll say that at the end of the video. But the normal or special summon by placing a predator counter it's not once per turn, which is pretty good. And its second effect is when you crash into a monster with that has an equal or lower level than it, then you can special summon a Predaplant monster from your deck during the battle phase. So it's really good with special summoning my next target here, which is Sondo. I just call it Sondo because it has a really long name. This card treats monsters with predator counters on it as dark, and then it can fusion summon with monsters that you have or with monsters that have predator counters on it. So you can target one of your opponent's monsters that has a predator counter and fusion with them. But it's mostly just used as another poly, because right now Predaplants don't have a consistent engine for placing predator counters on them, so it's mostly just used as another fusion. So it's still a pretty good card, and it's needed at 3 for what I have it right now. And then my last 3 for Predaplants is Seraph Ancient. This card no one ever expects, because it special summons itself when an opponent declares a direct attack. So you special summon it in defense position, and then when your opponent crashes into it or destroys it by spell or trap effects while it's on the field, it can grab you a Predaplant card. It says Predap, but it's literally just Predaplant card. I just usually simplify it as that. And then if this card battles an opponent's monster, both those monsters are destroyed. So this is a really good card. No one ever expects this, and I don't know why people don't play this at 3 in a Predaplant deck. And my last 3 is Lonefire Blossom. It's
standard. Everyone knows what
it's
it does.
standard for plant decks.
It's a beautiful card.
I run a mini Invoked engine to Alistair. It's mostly just because it's dark, and a lot of the fusion monsters for it work well with this. But I wouldn't run this any more than what I have the engine at. But the ironic thing is that half my extra deck is Invoked monsters, but it's just that they're so good. So, and now one-ups for monsters. Phillium Hydra. This card is really good. No one ever expects both of their effects. If a monster with a predator counter exists on the field, I can special summon this card by attributing that monster from my hand or graveyard. So this can be used to pitch for cost for a lot of things like Twin Twisters, and for my Orphan Scorpio plays. and it's still live in my graveyard. And then its second effect is, if this card is in grave, I could banish a Predaplant monster from my graveyard and target a monster on the field, and it loses 500 attack for the end of the turn. So this card is really good. You just have to banish another Predaplant monster, but it's still pretty good. Here's the Atone and Cobra. I don't really need to explain this card other than the fact that you can only use it once per duel, and it's pretty shameful to see some other Predaplant decks that have more than one copy of this. You don't ever want to see this at more than one or in your opening hand. I cry when I see this in my opening hand. And my last one, it's one no one ever has. It's a really good card. It's Cordyceps. If this card is in my graveyard, I can banish it and special summon 2 level 4 or lower Predaplant monsters from my graveyard, but I can't normal or set monsters or special summon monsters unless they're fusion monsters. So this is usually just used as a last ditch attempt, like when I've lost a lot of resources and they're in the grave. So and I have a poly in my hand, so just banish this, special summon them, and then use them for a fusion play. So they're very good. And it really works with the Invoked engine as well, because I can banish materials from my grave. Now to the spells. Predapruning. It's just basically a monster reborn for Predaplants. It's just used as an equip, so if this thing is Twin Twistered, the monster goes with it as well. So, but I use it to bait out a lot, but it's still really good at 3. I don't use the other revival card because it's just sometimes it can be a dead card in my hand. Triple poly standard in here. No need to explain that. Triple Allure. It's a mostly dark deck. No, don't need to explain that either.
Great draw engine right there.
Yep. Magical Meltdown. This card works a lot with my fusion plays, because when activated, cards can't be activated when I fusion summon, and that's standardly what I do in this deck.
No warning, no...
Yeah, it can't be warning or striked. So it's really good to counter that, and also it adds my Alistair to hand.
That's a great card.
Double Instant Fusion. I don't run Norden in here anymore because it's banned, obviously, but I have other Instant Fusion targets, and I'll show you guys later. Double Twin Twisters.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cards that you can discard with this. So, and the one-ofs, Ultra Poly. Everyone wants to use this as toilet paper. Don't use it as toilet paper. This card is very great. It's the card I always grab with Darling Tony and Cobra's effect. Pay 2,000, fusion summon, and no one can respond to this. It's a spell speed 4. I love this card. And then I get to banish and bring back the materials for it, so I don't know why people don't like this card. Invocation, self-explanatory with the Invoked engine. Foolish, you always want to get either Cordyceps or Hydra into grave, so just the one of. Raigeki, self-explanatory. And then my last card, it's my only trap, Predaplanet. So, its first effect has to deal with predator counters, but like I said before, this deck doesn't have a very good predator counter engine. So what I mostly use it for is its second effect, which is I can banish this card from grave and conduct another fusion summon using my predator plant cards. It's excellent when I'm low on resources or even when I'm going for an OTK. So just banish this, and it's good cost for Twin Twisters, so very good. And now to the extra deck. Triple Chimera Fulcia. It's needed at 3. Lots of people don't expect its battle effect, which is when it battles a monster or when a monster attacks it, I can decrease that monster's attack by 1,000 and increase this card's attack by 1,000 until the end of the turn. Its banishing effect is really good. I can target a monster that has a lower level than it and banish it. Just straight up banish it. So that works with the predator counters, but like I said, it just really depends. But mainly banishes monsters with an equal or lower level to it. And then when it's destroyed and sent from the field to the graveyard during the next standby phase. It's not my standby phase. It could be any player's standby phase. I can add a poly from deck to hand. So it's very good. Double Starving Venom. Obviously, this is a Predaplant deck, so this requires 2 dark monsters on the field to fusion summon. When it's fusion summoned, I target a special summon monster on my opponent's side of the field, and it gains that attack until the end of the turn. And then its once per turn effect is I can target a monster that was summoned from the extra deck, and its name and effect become that until the end of the turn. And then if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, I can blow up my opponent's monsters that were special summoned. So just blow up their field. So people are always worried to have to counteract this card. So it gives them worry to want to actually destroy this. And then we're in the 1 Greedy Venom Fusion. I'd hardly ever fusion summon this card, but when I do, it's basically game over for them, because I can just turn a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck to 0, and then just attack into it with the 33 attack that it has. But even if this card leaves the field, I can banish this card, which will always be used as a fusion material for it, and then special summon this card. But I have to blow up the field for it to do it. And because Vanity's Emptiness does not exist anymore, this effect will always go off. So, very good card. And now for the Invoked engine. So, just standard Invoke. I'll just start off with these 3 for right now.
Yeah.
These 2 are instant fusion targets, but this can easily be summoned in this because it's a dark. And then this is always going to be an instant fusion target unless I'm going up against something like Wind Witch or something. But this card's always good. I can just flip it face down and then use it as another fusion play as well for another card I have in here. And then this can it's just here because it's an Invoked engine. And then the other Invoked. I want to talk about this one for a moment. No one knows what this card does because it's hardly ever summoned, but I summon this out of the most often for any of my Invoked monsters because I have Lonefire Blossom. So this card gains 200 attack for each card my opponent controls. So it's always going to go up in attack whenever there's a card on my opponent's side of the field. And then this card does piercing damage to my opponent for a monster that's in defense position. This card is excellent. And its last effect is it can attack all monsters my opponent controls. So
Jesus.
Whenever I bring out this card, I always go for an OTK. I love this card, and it's always the one Invoked monster I always bring out.
Get ripped, bang, zing.
And then these are my other Invoked monsters. Obviously, this is just here for, stuff like Zoo. This is here for any light decks. Excellent card. I always bring it out when I'm going up against a light deck like Blue Eyes or something. And then this monster, I always bring it out with another monster that I'm going to bring out right now. It requires an Invoked monster and a monster summoned from the extra deck. So you can even banish monsters that your opponent has that are from the extra deck by using Invocation. Its effect is you can tribute this monster and banish all monsters with the same attribute as it. And this has all attributes to it. So it's not only a light, it's earth, dark, water, wind, and fire. So you can banish it and just basically blow up the field of monsters, problematic monsters. And it banishes them, so it's really good. My last 2 cards, Thousand Eyes, sucks up a monster, and it can be used as a fusion material for a lot of cards like the Elysium I have, or even for Starving Venom. So it just gets rid of a problematic monster, and it's an instant fusion target. And my last card is Dante, standard, rank 3. Just you can use it with the Darlingtonian and Cobra, just pump himself up. It's really good. And it's also another light target for Invoked, I have it right here, Makaba. So it's really good. I like it.
That's the deck profile?
And just the last thing I want to point out is that there are only 2 cards that are missing for this deck to be really, really good. And that's, it's missing Predaplant Dragostapelia. It's an OCG exclusive. It's a fusion monster. It requires a dark monster and a fusion monster. It just spreads predator counters, so you can use it for the effect of this monster, or monsters and stuff. And then the other one is it's a card called Predaplant. It's a quick play. You reveal as many Predaplant monsters in your hand, and all monsters on your opponent's side of the field gain predator counters. Those are the only 2 cards I'd be missing to make this deck really, really good.
Well, that was the extra deck. This has been No Meta here, and stay tuned for more deck profiles in the future.